Is this apple right here. As you can see, there's an apple trunk right here. There's one there, and then there's one that's laying down. You see how there's like a big trunk that lays way down that way. It goes pretty far, and it has a couple of live sprouts coming off it here. Now this thing never fruits because it's under the canopy here, and there's basically gets almost no light in the summer. But one year when I first moved here, maybe like 12 or more years ago, I found one apple. It was hanging on the tree in March, and I knocked it down and ate it, and I was like, wow, this is, edible. I should graft this out and see what it turns into. Never did it. So here we are to get a piece of it. Now there's several possibilities here. One is that this is a variety that was grafted and grown here on purpose. I mean, it's in row with the rest of these plum trees, so that's a pretty good possibility. Another possibility is that a seed was planted here, grafted to some variety that is now long gone, and that this is the suckers from the rootstock seedling, in which case it would be genetically unique, seedling apple basically. The third possibility is that this is a seedling dropped by a bear or a bird or a person. Right there through the trees and bushes there's an apple tree. There's actually two apple trees, 1, 2. There used to be 3 apple trees there, and 1 or 2 of them were Newton Pippin. One is still Newton Pippin. If I had to guess, I would say this is a seedling of Newton Pippin, but it very well could be a rootstock seedling. I'd say the third possibility is that this was actually the variety that someone planted here. So there's not much good scion wood, but we don't need very much. I'm going to take scions from this one and that one over there, the furthest one, in case they're different, which is possible, I'm going to cut some bigger pieces here that have graftable tips on them. I like the looks of that one. Okay, so that's tree number 1. Most likely this is the exact same thing. I just feel like I should graft both of them in case they're not the same. So this is last year's growth. Hey, look, there's a green apple way back in there. Okay, there we go. Obviously this didn't develop well. It's poorly pollinated. That's why it's all lopsided like this. It may not have any seeds in it, or I might just have 1 or 2. But being someone who's interested in very late hanging and late ripening apples, I would be, very remiss if I didn't graft this out and try it out in full sun to see what happens. It's quite sprightly. It's very, very crunchy. The flavor is nice. The flavor is pretty rich. It's got some kind of a green apple flavor, but also a little bit more than that going on. Yeah, I definitely want to see what this tastes like when grown in full sun. How did I miss that? Look at that. There's more on the tree. How did I possibly miss that? That's crazy. Well, maybe this has been bearing fruit and I just don't look careful enough. I drive by here like every time I go in and out, so. Because that yellow one there actually looks like it could be pretty ripe. Another interesting thing is that reminds me of Pomo Sinel a little bit, an apple I've been talking about a lot this year. Oh yeah, that is just solid. Okay, that's exciting. It's not very fragrant. March hedge number 1 north. Check this out. So this is Pomo Sinel, a variety that was discovered by Michael Malthus growing on a hillside nearby. He estimated the tree to be 100 years old. This is, when I grafted out to my tree. Otherwise, no one knows what it is, but look at the similarity to this other late hanging apple. Interesting, right? So these may be, apples of the same heritage, like the same original parents. I would guess, Golden Delicious or Grimes Golden is in there somewhere. Or they may be unrelated. They may be the same apple. What if they're the same apple? Very interesting. So this is why people should be out there, looking at hedgerow apples, looking at old apples on abandoned homesteads. This tree that is in my neighbor's hedgerow could die in a year. Every year we lose more and more of our apple heritage and these potentially important genes, like for this, for instance, and Pomo Sinel, breeding late hanging winter apples. But here's the moment of truth. You guys ready? Very crisp. It has a fine grained texture. There's not very much sugar, but that could be because it gets no light. Very well could be. I mean, I rarely taste an apple with this little sugar in this area. So it has a kind of a watery presentation, and that makes it fairly acidic. Like, it's probably no more acidic than your average apple. It just doesn't have enough sugar to kind of balance it out. Flavor-wise, I don't detect anything particularly interesting. I don't get any of the banana flavor that's often in yellow apples, including very strong in Pommeau. So I'm not going to be able to assess this well until I actually grow it somewhere else and fruit it somewhere else. Like I'm going to graft it out on a tree, a healthy tree, a vigorous tree that's in the sun. In the next few years, we can find out what this apple is really about. Another apple that I don't grow, but that a lot of people talk about in this area is yellow bellflower. And it was grown a lot in this area, especially towards the coast where there's very low chill and there's not enough chill for a lot of apples. And that was one of the heirloom apples that would actually grow and fruit in these low chill areas. There's a lot of them that will, but back then, you know, there weren't as many apples known that would do that. So I should look into that one and see if that could be another potential parent. And again, this could be something that was actually planted there on purpose and grafted, and that it's a grafted variety, you know, that's selected. It could have a name. It could be some old heirloom, but I'm going to guess still that it's a seedling apple. But I would not be at all surprised if these two apples have shared parentage of some kind. So having a lack of sun, and also that area there is really wet. So you saw the blackberries where I was picking this, and it's all soggy in there. There's springs and stuff, so those roots are probably in the water. It's getting a ton of water and no sun, and that could very well lead to the low flavor and the low sugars. So we'll just have to see what it's like when it gets some sun. Stay tuned for a few years. Still moves too easy. So that's what I don't like this tape, because it's hard to stretch it without breaking it. You just wrap these suckers tight, because if they move at all while the graft's healing, it's game over. It's still kind of wiggly. This is a lot bigger than this, so we'll put a splint on that. Just a little scrap of bamboo here. Any stick will do, but it should be a lot longer than the graft. So the other thing I'm doing here is I'm leaving this scion very long. It's got fruit buds on it that are actually already showing signs of busting open, and that means it's heavier. When it starts growing, it's going to catch more wind. If a bird lands on it, it'll have more leverage to break the graft. So that alone is reason to do this splint, but also I wasn't really able to get the graft as tight as I wanted. Okay, so I'm liking that. Alright, so here's the entire graft. It's funny, this almost doesn't even look like an apple. It's got a real different look to it. So I've left fruit buds on here that I'm hoping will produce fruit either this year or soon. They're actually showing green already. So apparently this is a very early bloomer. I'm going to take a little bit off of here, but I'm going to leave most of it. And you probably think you can't do that. Well, we're going to find out. I'm planning to do this a lot this year and see what I can get away with. I have done it before, but not to the extreme that I'm going to do it this year.